Let's talk about tax, baby. We're 2 weeks out from the election and we know what the major parties' tax proposals are, so it's time to rate them. Let's start with National, who pretty much want to keep the status quo. Is that good for economic growth? Well, given that most of our money goes into housing rather than investing in businesses that create exports and jobs, that is a big fail. Is it simple? This is one area that National actually get a tick on because our current tax system is pretty simple. Is it avoidable? In other words, can I pay an accountant to help me avoid paying as much tax? Absolutely we can in the current model, so they get a fail there. At the moment we've got an $11 billion hole because of the way we treat property taxation. So the current system has massive holes in it and is avoidable. Lastly, fairness. Well, given that in some recent years the average house has earned more than the average wage, $50,000 per year the average house has been increasing by. That's absolute madness. That's not a fair tax system, so National fails on that mark as well. Let's move on to Labor and the Greens, or at least as much as we know about Labor's tax policy. 2 weeks out from an election, they haven't really told us what it is. But let's assume they go with the Greens' idea of a capital gains tax excluding the family home. Will that help economic growth? No, it won't. We've seen this overseas. All a capital gains tax does is encourage people to not sell the home or not sell businesses. So you get less turnover happening in the economy and a drag on economic growth as a result. Is it simple? Another big fail there for capital gains taxes. They are not simple to administer, very complicated beasts. Are they avoidable? Well, if you're excluding the family home, unfortunately, there is a massive gap in this tax system and makes it very avoidable. People will just put more money into their family home. Currently we have some family homes worth 50 million bucks. You'll see people putting more and more money into the family home to avoid paying any tax. And another way that they can avoid paying tax is simply by, if they've got 6 homes and 6 grandchildren, for example, they just give those homes to the grandchildren and call those their family homes. There's ways around that system. Lastly, is it fair? Well, this is one area that actually Labor and the Greens policy is marginally better than National's on, because they will at least tax some of that increase in capital gain that we are seeing in our housing stock. Lastly, New Zealand First's policy. Well, given the fact that they have promised about $14 billion of extra expenditure every year and about $18 billion of one-off capital expenditure, you'd expect New Zealand First would have a clearly outlined revenue policy to be able to pay for that. But they don't. So what's left is a whole lot of question marks about how they're actually going to pay for the promises that they're making. Unless you're going to print money, Winnie? No. And that brings us to TOP's policy. So the problem with our tax system at the moment is we put all of the burden onto wage and salary earners and very little onto assets. We have some of the lowest taxes on property in the world. People put more money into property than any other country in the world, and as a result we have some of the highest house prices in the world. It's an $11 billion hole in our tax system and we want to close it. That'll allow us to cut income taxes by 1/3, cutting the burden on wage and salary earners. So how we will do that is by making sure that property pays at least as much tax as other investments, such as a bank deposit. That'll generate about $11 billion and push people into investing in businesses that actually create jobs and exports. And that is good for growth. It is also very simple to administer and very difficult to avoid because we're not excluding any sort of assets from that. And lastly, it is more fair because we're reducing income taxes for wage and salary earners. People are concerned about having taxes on housing, but actually at the moment, renters and people who don't own any assets get totally stung by the current system. Half of New Zealanders rent, 40% of New Zealanders own nothing. Where's their tax break, New Zealand? And finally, of course, people are concerned about the impact of this tax on the elderly. Well, we're allowing them to defer payment and turn it into an estate duty, which actually exists in most other countries in the world. Where's the bad? TOP system wins on every count.